Have you ever replayed a moment from your past so many times that it almost feels like it's happening in real time? That job you didn't take. That person you let slip away. That sharp word you wish you had never said. Regret has a way of haunting us like a shadow, following us into the quiet hours of the night, whispering what if over and over. But here's the real question: why does regret cut so deeply? Why can't we just move on the way we do with other emotions? And perhaps most importantly, what is regret really trying to teach us about ourselves? You see, regret isn't just a painful feeling. It's one of the most uniquely human emotions. It's a mirror held up to our choices, our missed chances, and our deepest desires. Unlike sadness or anger, regret ties us to time itself. It pulls us backward, forcing us to relive a version of life that never was but could have been, and that can either paralyze us or, if we understand it, transform us. Let's start with the basics. Psychologists define regret as a negative cognitive emotional state involving blame, disappointment, or sorrow over something we did or didn't do in the past. It's an emotion of counterfactuals. That's just a fancy way of saying it lives in the what could have been. If only I had studied harder. If only I had spoken up. If only I had left earlier. Regret thrives on imagining a different outcome. And that's what makes it so sticky. The brain keeps rehearsing the alternate version of reality, as though it could still change something. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Studies show that regret doesn't just sit in the mind. It changes our physiology. It activates brain regions like the orbitofrontal cortex and amygdala, the same areas tied to learning and emotional processing. In fact, some neuroscientists argue that regret evolved precisely as a learning tool. It's the brain's way of saying, "That hurt. Let's not do it again." In this sense, regret isn't just a punishment, it's a teacher. But of course, there's a dark side. Think of two types of regret: the kind that sharpens you and the kind that chains you. The first is active regret. It pushes you to change, to take different actions, to grow. The second is passive regret. It keeps you stuck in endless loops, beating yourself up for choices you can't undo. Psychologists have even studied this difference. In the short term, we tend to regret things we did, words spoken in anger, risks that backfired. But in the long term, the heaviest regrets are often about what we didn't do. The paths we never walked, the dreams we never chased, the loves we let slip away. I want you to sit with what will you regret more, your mistakes or your hesitations. Most people at the end of their lives say it wasn't the errors that haunted them. It was the silence, the chances never taken, the roads left unexplored. But why is regret so relentless? It's because it taps into identity. Every regret, big or small, says something about who we are, or at least who we wanted to be. That's why even tiny regrets like missing a phone call can sting more than we expect. They're not just about the action, they're about the story we tell ourselves. If I had done that, I'd be different, I'd be better. Regret doesn't just rewrite events, it rewrites us. Now let's pull back and ask something deeper. Is regret even avoidable? Some philosophers, like the existentialists, argue that regret is proof of freedom. If we had no choices, there would be no regret. Only when life branches into different paths, and we choose one, does regret appear. Kierkegaard, in fact, said that to live is to choose, and to choose is to regret. In other words, regret is baked into the human condition. It's not a bug, it's the price of freedom. But here's where psychology and philosophy meet. If regret is inevitable, how do we live with it without being consumed by it? The answer may lie in how we frame our past. Consider two people who both failed at starting a business. One says, "I wasted years of my life, I'm a failure." The other says, "That was painful, but I learned skills and resilience I never would have otherwise." Same event, different story. The first is imprisoned by regret. The second is transformed by it. This is where the science of counterfactual thinking comes back in. Not all what-ifs are destructive. There's something called upward counterfactuals, imagining a better outcome. These often fuel regret and self-blame, but there are also downward counterfactuals, imagining how things could have been worse. These shift regret into gratitude. For example, I regret crashing my car, but I'm grateful no one was hurt. That reframe doesn't erase regret, but it reshapes it into wisdom. Let me ask you a personal question. if you could erase all regret from your life, would you? At first glance, most of us would scream yes. But think about it carefully. Without regret, how would you have learned compassion? How would you have grown? How would you know what truly matters to you? Regret is painful, but it's also directional. It points us toward our values. You don't regret what you didn't care about. You regret what touched your core, and that's powerful. But there's another dimension here. We can't ignore collective regret. Entire nations and cultures carry regret. The wars fought, the injustices tolerated, the opportunities lost. These regrets shape history, policies, even art. And just like individuals, societies can either be paralyzed by regret or use it as fuel for change. That's why truth and reconciliation processes exist. That's why apologies matter. Regret isn't just about guilt, it's about growth. Now let's circle back to you. Think about the regret weighing on you most right now. Maybe it's a broken relationship. Maybe it's a risk you never took. Maybe it's something you said that you can't unsay. What if that regret isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter? What if regret is less about what you lost and more about what you're being called to pay attention to? Because here's the truth. Regret, when faced, honestly has the power to reshape the future. That apology you've been holding back. Regret is pushing you to speak it. That dream you've been ignoring. Regret is reminding you it matters. That self-destructive pattern you keep repeating. Regret is the signal that says it's time to stop. Regret hurts because it's a messenger. And like all messengers, we can either listen or silence it. But let's not be naive. Some regrets can't be undone. Some choices really are final. A loved one gone. A time window closed forever, what then? This is where we move from psychology into something deeper: acceptance. Not passive resignation, but the kind of acceptance that says I can't change yesterday, but I can choose today. The Stoics had a phrase for this: amor fati, the love of fate. It doesn't mean loving the pain itself, but loving what the pain can grow in us. So maybe the real psychology of regret isn't about erasing it, but integrating it. Carrying it not as a wound that bleeds endlessly, but as a scar that reminds us where we've been and who we've become. Scars don't disappear, but they also don't define the end of the story. They're just part of it. And let me leave you with this. If you're alive, you're going to regret. There's no avoiding it. But the question is, will your regrets break you or build you? Will they lock you into the past or unlock a better future? Because in the end, regret is proof that you cared. Proof that your choices matter. Proof that your life is not a series of empty steps, but a path filled with meaning, risk, and growth. So the next time regret whispers in your ear, don't run. Don't numb it. Listen. Ask it what it's trying to teach you. Because regret, painful as it is, might just be the clearest sign that you are in fact alive. If this video spoke to you, if it helped you see regret in a new light, then take a second to like it. It tells the algorithm this content matters. Subscribe if you want more explorations into the psychology and philosophy of the human mind. And share this with someone you know is struggling with regret. Someone who might need to hear that their pain isn't the end, it's part of the journey. Because together, by facing our regrets, we learn to live not in the shadow of what might have been, but in the light of what still can be.